Of course, the mainstream media remains completely obsessed with Partygate as it continues efforts to derail Boris Johnson. Tonight, the BBC aired an hour-long documentary dedicated to the drama where they encourage yet more hysteria over Downing Street parties.
There was no party. All guidance was followed completely during number 10.
As Boris Johnson prepares for the end of the official investigation into pandemic parties, we reveal what happened behind the world's most famous front door.
Slight problem. They didn't speak to one person on the record. And Sky News really outdid themselves earlier today with their deputy political editor Sam Coates putting on quite a performance outside number 10.
Did you lie at the dispatch box, Prime Minister? Do you endorse law-breaking in Cabinet, Priti Patel? Is Partygate embarrassing on the world stage, Foreign Secretary? Are you being loyal to save your job? Do you think a future Prime Minister would make you Foreign Secretary? Do you want to replace Boris Johnson? Would you defend anything at all, Grant Shapps? Has Boris Johnson got a better grip on government than you had on the Foreign Office last year? Did Boris Johnson lie at the dispatch box, Nadhim Zahawi? Or would you prefer to succeed him as Prime Minister? Did you talk about Partygate in Cabinet, or is it easier to hear no evil and see no evil?
Matters to discuss.
I bet there are.
I think the man might be better suited to the West End stage. Well, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps was thrown to the lion's den this morning and he offered a kindly reminder of the far greater issues that the public really wish to hear about.
This doesn't look good, does it? At a time when you should be trying as a government to clear things up, to offer some kind of clarity and openness and transparency, this looks like a mess. It looks like you're trying to hide stuff.
Well, with the greatest respect to you, I mean, both myself and I suspect by now your viewers are probably pretty keen to hear, you know, what we're doing to tackle cost of living, what's happening with regard to these threatened rail strikes and much else. And so, in a way, you're perpetuating it by continuing to talk about it.
I think he's right, but do you? Is it time we moved on from Partygate to focus on combating the cost of living crisis? Let me know your thoughts by emailing dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me at GBNews, vote in our poll there too. I'll bring you those results shortly. But to help you make up your mind tonight, I'm joined by the Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, the journalist Angela Epstein and Conservative commentator Alex Dean. So Alex Dean, you were of course a former advisor to David Cameron. Do you feel like the media hysteria over this matches the crime?
No, I don't. I think some people in Westminster and in the media need to calm down a bit. And I think that most people in the country have pretty much moved on from this already. That's not to say that everything's fine in government. I, as a Conservative, want to see this government delivering on a Conservative agenda. I think if there was ever a time for tax cuts, that time is now. I think Grant Shapps was right when he was talking about energy crisis, cost of living crisis. The answer to me as a Tory is obvious. We've got to lower the costs that people pay for things. We should be looking at unilateral tariff dropping. We should be more supportive of Ukraine. There's a world of things for government to do now, and I doubt very few people really care about Boris and Partygate.
Angela Epstein, you don't think the Prime Minister should go over Partygate?
No, I mean, look, I think even anybody who has the most slavish pop star style devotion, blind devotion to Boris Johnson would be pushed not to admit that it looked, sounded, and where the offences have been found to be true, dreadful. And I think it's all very well saying push it aside. Let's pause for a moment and all agree it was awful. They shouldn't have been doing it. I accept it. I've supported Boris Johnson, but I accept people are hurting, without wishing to be melodramatic, because of all the things we know they couldn't do and the loved ones we lost. We all know that, but we have to be proportionate and ask ourselves, what are we now achieving? This has kind of been, the optics are multi-perspective, because you've got Sue Gray's report, then the bit redacted because it had to go to the Met, and then you've got internal investigations, and we've got this kind of mosaic response, coupled with Laura Kuenssberg talking about melodramatic, sort of very melodramatic documentary this evening on BBC Two, which, as you said, didn't involve people on the record.
Not one.
The fabled,
not one.
These actors were actors' voices, the actors' voices. You always want to do the kind of Eurotrash stuff and put on silly accents. But this is not to make it silly. We all know it hurt, but we have to say to ourselves all the things that Alex just said. Cost of living crisis. Look how much the energy bills are going to soar. £800 at the very least. Putin with his stuttering finger over the trigger. I mean, monkeypox. You couldn't make it up. This is a country, rail strikes. I don't need to give you the shopping list of disasters that are waiting to happen. So let's acknowledge, let's learn, let's apologise and not demean those people who suffered.
Exactly. But in fairness, Boris Johnson has apologised for months and months on end. I mean, Kevin Maguire, you don't seem to care at all that Keir Starmer was caught on video downing beer and munching on curry at this massive party with 15 people. There he is. But you've almost gone catatonic with rage over the fact that Boris Johnson issued a toast to his departing press secretary or director of communications at a leaving do. What's the difference, Kevin?
Dan, if Keir Starmer is found to have broken the law at the time and is fined, then he has to go. Boris Johnson was fined because he broke the law at the time and he should have gone and he didn't. I take an even-handed approach to both men here, and I think Alex and Angela are both wrong when they think people don't care. People do care because people made huge sacrifices. They don't like to be taken for fools. They don't like the wine in that glass raised by the Prime Minister to be thrown in their faces when he was lecturing them almost nightly to follow the rules, and he wasn't doing it himself with his team. And you have the first Prime Minister in history to be fined in office. He clings on now. He clearly lied to MPs. Once the Gray report is out the way tomorrow, there'll be an inquiry by the Privileges Committee into whether he lied. And we can't move on until he moves on. And you
but Kevin, just to pick you up about what you said about that event.
And a lot of other issues, when the bloke is clearly chaotic, totally self-serving, happy to throw juniors under the bus and rarely tell the truth.
Kevin, can I just pick you up on the specifics of the event that you talk about, though? Because he wasn't fined at all for that picture that everyone's getting so worked up about. He was fined for being presented with a birthday cake that never left its Tupperware container. I mean, are you seriously saying that that reaches the standards of overthrowing a democratic mandate?
He didn't challenge the birthday party, did he? Now, you look at that picture, you look at everyone around it, all the empty bottles, a half a gin bottle, the bottle of fizz, and you wonder why the police didn't investigate that. When we get the Gray report tomorrow, I suspect it will be very, very factual. It won't call for recommendations about whether the Prime Minister goes or stays. It may address, as the interim report, the brief report did, the culture in Downing Street, which just seemed to be boozy bashers. It was Party Street. At times it was the only nightclub left open in London. Yeah, I do think he should go if his personal standards fall so below what we should expect in the
Alex
highest
Dean,
office
your
of state.
response.
Yeah, Dan, I get that Kevin wants the Prime Minister to go. That's
Yes, we get that.
Logical position for a left-wing journalist, and I understand. I sort of respect him. I mean, he's consistent, right? But what isn't consistent, and this is, I think, the biggest potential problem to come out of this whole episode, it's not about the specifics of individuals and what they did. It's what people are now saying about the rule of law. Kevin says, this leaves me wondering why the police didn't investigate X, because he didn't get the result out of a police investigation that he wanted. I think that's bad. And worse, there's only one person in this situation who's been going around saying that you should resign if you're investigated, not convicted, undermining the notion of the presumption of innocence. You should resign if you're investigated. And that was Keir Starmer. Well, he's being investigated now, and he hasn't resigned, has he?
Yeah, so why didn't he go for that, Kevin? Why didn't he go for that?
No, I understand Alex's criticism of that, and to some extent I share it. I don't think he was particularly wise on that, but you could see that Boris Johnson, it was clear from the evidence right from the beginning, was guilty, and so it turned out, at least on this one incident. But the main point, and you've got to see it, you can criticise Keir Starmer as much as you like, but the Prime Minister, who is an incredibly powerful person in this country, broke the law. He broke draconian laws that he set for everybody else. He didn't follow himself. And I think maybe you can call me old-fashioned if you like, Dan, but I think the rulers who set the rules for the ruled should follow them. And if they don't, they should be out now. And
well, Angela Epstein, how do you respond to that point?
They will sack him or they will not. They will be tainted, I believe, if they don't. And I think if you were Keir Starmer in Labour, you would want Boris Johnson not to go. Yeah, they want the juicy scalp in public. That's quite clear. But you want him to stumble on to the next election because he is no longer the great vote
I disagree with that
used to be because people
still
do care about it.
The most
people have
popular
standards.
Oh, Kevin, calm down. It's not good for your blood pressure. I mean, first of all, I take issue with the fact that you said Alex and I don't care. I can't speak for Alex. He seems competent enough to speak for himself. I preface all my comments by saying I do care. Thank God I didn't lose anybody, but there were very close loved ones I didn't see for a long time. And I think we're confusing parity between not seeing loved ones, not being able to be with those close to us, or if very tragically going to funerals or with being in a workplace where, yes, there was too much merriment and jocularity, but being already in that workplace in a so-called bubble. The two are not the same. I am not condoning what went on. But if you go on and on about the small stuff, or the relatively small stuff, you also run the risk of wiping out the goodwill, the reservoir of goodwill that comes from the big stuff, the big calls, the vaccine programme, the statesman-like behaviour over Ukraine, leading front and centre compared to the rest of Europe. And also, I think you also undervalue the popularity that Boris Johnson still has as a political talent. Before this whole dog and pony show kicked off, and I'm not going to keep repeating myself, it was wrong. But I think, first of all, what I hear is there are a lot of people that hold their nose and say, I still want Boris there because at least we know who he is, compared to kind of the milk and water potential successors. I mean, if Starmer and Boris went, not only would it massively destabilise us at a time when, as I said before, all these horrible things are going on and these uncertain things are going on, but who are the people that would least say, this is where I am and what I stand for? We're going to have our liberty. I'm not an interventionist. We're going to have a vaccine programme that's going to get us out of here. We're going to get Brexit done. I don't see anybody on the political landscape who will do that. And even those that were his detractors recognise. Yeah, there was a chap on Radio 4 this afternoon saying his majority went from 500 to whatever it was, 4,000, because of Boris Johnson. And I think you need a party where people
and never underestimate Boris Johnson, because you do that at your peril. Fascinating debate. That's the journalist Angela Epstein. Before that, the associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and the Conservative commentator Alex Dean. So who do you agree with on this? Well, Jonathan on Twitter writes to say, I'm annoyed and angry that the MSM still can't get it out of their heads that Partygate is over. From Ben via email, we can hold politicians to account while trying to help the cost of living crisis. We can do both. And from Ali, no questions, of course we should. This is a concerted attempt by the left and Remain biased media to bring down a democratically elected PM, and this must not be allowed to happen. We voted Tory because we wanted Boris for PM. And your verdict is now in. Wow. 84% of you, overwhelming number of you, believe that we should move on from Partygate to focus on battling the cost of living crisis. Just 16% of you say the current MSM focus on Partygate is right. Only one more day of it, folks, I promise you. The Sue Gray report should be released tomorrow. Please, God, then let it be over.